On your marks, ready, set, let's go. Tableau Pro, got the data to show. Putting maps on the screen, yeah, you know. From streets to peaks, we're in the know. Ain't no mystery, we got the data clean. Visualizing scenes, creating the dream. Drag and drop, yeah, it's our routine. Looking at the map, seeing what's unseen. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. In Tableau, we got the tools that gleam, customizing colors, every single scheme. From heat maps to colorful themes, our maps are the stuff of dreams. Zoom in, pan out, navigate the town. Filtered by the data, lay the legends down. Interactive elements, make them come around. Every presentation, we're wearing the crown. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. You got the data points, we got the layers. Polygons and lines, ain't no need for prayers. Geocoding, making sure it's fair. Map box and WS we prepare. Heat map, flow map, any type you see. With tables power, we bring it to reality. Geospatial insights, the place to be. When you're getting mappy, you're truly free. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Now you're mapping, you know you're happy. Tableau skills, making magic snappy. Every map, a story to unfold. Getting happy with it, the tales we told. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it. Na 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 na, na na na. Getting happy with it.
There we go.
Perfect.
All right, we will get started here. Now that we got everything started, welcome. This is our July meeting for the San Diego Tableau User Group. Welcome everybody in person and welcome everyone who's come in virtually. We appreciate it. And for those of you just coming in, please make sure you sign in. We have pizza in the back and drinks. And for everyone else, the food's terrible. You won't enjoy it, so don't feel jealous. Today, for our agenda, we'll start with welcome and introductions. We'll talk through a couple of projects that are going on, in addition to something else that involves maps. So I know we're very excited today. We have Dennis Kao presenting to us. We're very fortunate he was here for a conference and he offered to come and visit our group. So thank you so much, Dennis. And then we'll hang out a little bit and network and ask questions and have a great time. So we're the leadership team. I'm Luigi. I work for a company called Direct Avenue. Where I'm the vice president of operations. We're a media buying agency. We buy time for linear and connected television. And I'm the primary dashboard author, and I'm in charge of our operations. Also with me here today is Kayla Swain. She's hiding in the back, but she's present as well, and she helps run the group. Ashley Zong is not here today, but she's our third leader, and they help us put on great meetings. And if you're local to San Diego and you're seeing this later, please contact us. We'd love to have you come on out. All right. Are you a slacker? Do you use Slack or on LinkedIn? If you are, you're in luck. We have a Slack channel for the San Diego Tableau user group, and we also have a LinkedIn group. This time I managed to remember to put QR codes. So if you're not part of that, please go ahead and join. We have further discussions there and talk about ideas for meetings and help each other out. And it's a great place to connect when we're not in person. Secondly, we're always looking for speakers. We're fortunate to have Dennis fly out, but we also want people that are here in San Diego that want to present, whether you just want to practice presenting or you have great ideas. Please, we'd love to have you come in and teach us something new. Great support here, and most of the times we're not hybrid, so you won't necessarily be presenting to dozens and dozens of people who are also logged in virtually. And if you work somewhere and are interested in hosting a meeting where we can come together, let us know as well. We're always looking for speakers and spaces to have our meetings. Benefit, you don't have to go far from work. We'll come to you, and it really helps us out. So if you're interested, contact one of us or on Slack or LinkedIn. That'd be fantastic. And also in the same vein, if anyone wants to sponsor our user group, whether you're with a company or know someone, that'll help us put on more events, maybe put on some more fun things, go to other venues and do other things outside of what we're doing here. Again, contact me, and it'll help us put on more fantastic things for your entertainment and education. Education is key. That's why you're here tonight. You've met us, the leaders. Does anyone else want to introduce themselves and say hi, or you have any announcements? Whether maybe you're looking for work, or more people are hiring, or just anything else that's going on. That's what we're here, is to get to know each other. And if not, that's okay too. I don't want to necessarily put anyone on the spot. That's right. I'll do what I do best. I'll keep talking here. And that said, again, keep in touch with us, and we're going to have some more events coming up. We're planning our next event, and then we'll also earlier in the spring we had a Data Plus Coffee. We're looking to do that again. If you have any ideas about a good place where we can get together, quiet place, have some coffee, talk about what we want to do with the group and what we want to learn. Also, let me know. The last time we did it was right before a conference, and we did it down in Seaport Village, and that was nice because got us a little energized before conference. Now it can be anywhere. So, got any ideas? Let us know. All right, Iron Quest. Who here has heard of Iron Quest? All right. Well, who's heard of Iron Viz? All right. So Iron Quest is a community project that's run by Sarah Bartlett, and it's done a few times a year, and it's done to help prepare you, get ready, whether you want to participate in Iron Viz or you just want to learn how it goes. They come up with your secret ingredient or your data set, like in Iron Chef, and they send it out, and then you put together this your viz and you submit it, and then they get graded, and the people putting on the project also look through it all, and then they give you feedback. So it not only gives you practice, but it also gives you that feedback to help you learn. And working on this stuff all the time, and then taking yourself outside your comfort zone is a really great way to learn. I've participated in a few of these, and they're fantastic. And this month's theme is maps. Maps are awesome. Maps are fantastic. I may not be as excited as Dennis over here, but I've seen him present a bunch of times, and there's so much you can do, and then they're so powerful in what you can show. If you're interested in learning or interested in maps or just want to try something different, I really encourage you to join in. And hello, welcome everybody. Please come on in. It's also co-hosted. There's a new Tableau user group called Data Plus Maps. Does anyone here know anything about the new user group Data Plus Maps? It's brand new. They're going to be having their first meeting. I believe it's in August. And they're helping put on this event. So the user group leaders. I believe you're a user group. Dennis is a user group leader for Data Plus Maps. There's two QR codes here. One is to Iron Quest that brings you to the landing page and gives you more information. And the other one is a link to join their first meeting. I definitely recommend that you check it out. And and talk about user groups. There's a whole ton of user groups for all kinds of interests. We're in a regional one here, but then there's maps, there's Data Plus Women, which we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide. I'm involved with marketing and market research. There's a ton of different user groups for your different interests or even places where you work, like higher education, veteran affairs, and different things. I encourage you to check out user groups as well and see what's out there. There's new ones starting all the time. And if you're interested in starting a user group, they're actually accepting applications now. I didn't mark down when that deadline is, but all that's available online. And if you have any questions, please come see me and I can help you along with that. But definitely get involved in Iron Quest, and especially this month with maps. You're going to be so excited from today's presentation. You're going to want to run out, participate, and join the Tableau, the Data Plus Maps user group. Fantastic. All right. Speaking of other Tableau user groups, there's a relatively new one called Data Plus Women New England chapter. So across the world, there's different chapters for Data Plus Women. And this new one, they're putting on an event called DataViz Showcase 2024. And the topic is any data that's related to women. And like the Iron Quest, you will get your data set, you put together your viz and you submit it. And then the people with the Data Plus Women, the New England Tableau user group, they'll go through the vizes and there'll be 3 winners. They haven't, at last I checked, announced what the prizes are, but I mean, pride of completing a project is number one for me, obviously, but there'll be other prizes as well. And you'll get featured in their user group meeting, and the people that run this group are fantastic as well. And definitely check it out. The QR code will take you to a LinkedIn page that gives more information. And if I mess that up, contact me and then I will get you in the right place. But yeah, those are 2 things going on, and great ways to get involved and learn. So any questions on what Iron Quest is or the VisualizeHER or anything else related to Tableau user groups, let me know. All right, excellent. All right, well, we're getting ready for a feature presentation here. We have Dennis Kao. He's here for another conference, and he has offered to come and present to us in person. For those, how many here were at the Tableau conference this year? He presented at a conference and had a wonderful session. Anytime you can get a chance to see him speak, it's a real treat, and we're lucky to have him here today. And also, yesterday was his birthday, so we're celebrating today. So
be extra nice.
So be extra nice and applaud. While we're getting set up here, we'll play some more music, And please, everyone, welcome Dennis. That's all right. I may play on here.
Maps, flow maps, any kind of plot. Layering the data, giving it all we've got. Geocoding secrets, we're hitting the spot.
No? Okay. Oh, I'm on the camera here too, so.
And live large, you gotta push it far. Big data dreams traveling in fast cars. But the map game, it's a whole new art. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, making maps that spark.
Here, let me.
Big data dreams.
All right, Dennis is getting situated here. I hope everyone enjoyed some of that music. If you are interested in getting those tracks, please let me know. And if there are any questions, drop them in the chat, and we will do our best to catch the ones that are here virtually. And then for everyone else here, we'll take your questions, and let's get started.
Does it look okay on the screen?
So I see Tableau, and yeah, it looks good.
See that? Okay, great. All right. Hello, everybody. It's to go and just kind of completely kind of change the way I do my work. So now these days I probably visualize 95% of my maps in Tableau, but I still do some of the data management and things like that in a GIS software. And I use QGIS specifically because it's free. But I was trained in ArcGIS when I was in my PhD program. I write a little kind of occasional thread or it turns into a blog because I get it published on Typefully. But it's a little thread. Sometimes I talk a little bit about how my workflow around, I create things in QGIS or prepare the data and then bring it into Tableau. And so kind of be on the lookout if that's of interest to you. And I'll talk a little bit about that workflow in a minute. So this is kind of my Tableau journey. So I discovered Tableau November 2020. It was kind of the COVID pandemic. I was kind of searching for things to do. And during that time, I discovered Tableau and really kind of fell in love with Tableau. And you'll see, this was the first map I prepared. I didn't even know how to bring data into Tableau. And so this is data straight out of the software. The percentage of Asian Americans in the United States by, I believe, census tract. I didn't even know what the distinction between a sheet and a dashboard. And so this is basically a screenshot of the sheet, right? This was my first public viz, Makeover Monday, which is another community project that you may have heard of, provide data each Monday, and people who want to kind of work and practice visiting, they can use that data and then share it and get some feedback from the community and things like that. So this was my first one. And of course it included a map. I had to include a map. And this was 3.5 years ago when I created a Balboa Park. And I'll kind of go over some of the elements of this and hopefully kind of share some of my tips, some of the kind of best practices and lessons learned, kind of using Tableau to create maps, coming from a GIS perspective, right? I think the interesting thing is I learned mapping using a GIS tool, which is a specialized software, right? It's specially made to handle spatial data, whereas Tableau wasn't originally that, right? But now it's getting better. But there's still kind of little things that you have to kind of think about moving from the GIS world, but trying to emulate some of the things that GIS software can do really easily and doing in Tableau. That's kind of what I've been trying to work on. And so this is an example of kind of a map I created just a couple months ago, right prior to Tableau conference in preparation for my presentation. And I'll kind of go over some of the elements and we'll take a closer look at that one in a minute. And I'm a firm believer of practice. And you'll see that over the course, I've done since discovering Tableau, I've been practicing as much as I can. And I have maybe about 200 visits on my Tableau public profile now. A large majority of them include maps. And you'll notice that I think it's improved, my maps that I do for my regular work, right? So this was 2013. Then I discovered Tableau a couple years later. This was a map that I recently just published in an article here. And you'll notice that there is, at least for me, this one looks definitely better than this. Kind of the colors, the use of kind of like the points, trying to distinguish them, distinguishing the wards. This is Washington, D.C., and these dots are dental services in Washington, D.C. Compared to this, where I'm not sure what I was doing, kind of looking back, I'm a little embarrassed by this map. But this was published in an article. This is something I did about 10 years ago. And you notice it's the same thing, right? These points are kind of substance abuse treatment facilities. But for some reason, I use triangles. For some reason, I use the color yellow, and they don't really pop as much in contrast to what I don't know if you can see this. So the yellow are the African American hotspots, like areas where there are high concentration African Americans and so forth. And you'll notice that I think it's really improved my work, just practicing as much as I can. Okay, and this was done not in Tableau, this was done in QGIS. So I think the practice that I've kind of been able to do, I think has honed my work as well. And so hopefully, that's kind of a key lesson that I've learned. I think the impetus of this presentation was prior to Tableau conference in May. I did a series of maps, and I had kind of ulterior motives in doing so. First, I was excited about Tableau conference. I was excited about coming back to San Diego, a place that I visit often when I lived in LA. Also, I was trying to generate some material for my presentation, right? And so I created, here I'm showcasing 9, but I created about 10, 11 maps of San Diego using kind of different techniques. And I'll share some of those as we go along this presentation. I'm happy to entertain questions throughout, so feel free to raise your hand and we can try to facilitate that. A couple of caveats. I know many of you are probably not in the space that allows you to spend too much time on maps, right? You want to create a map, you want to create it quickly, and I totally understand that, right? But I think there are things you can think about, even in the space that you're working in, to create maps that are effective, right? And in my mind, a beautiful map is first and foremost an effective map. It's a clear map, it's a clean map that really conveys whatever message or story that you're trying to convey. And there are kind of techniques that cartographers and map makers and map designers use in order to enhance the effectiveness of a map. And so we'll kind of talk a little bit about some of those as we go. Okay. So that workbook, which links to all the 9 maps, is available on my Tableau public. All the data, if you're interested, that I use to create all those maps is also available in my Google Drive folder, and you can link to that as well if you're interested in kind of practicing. Most of them are shape files, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about those as we go. But if you're interested, feel free. The data is there. And I think I'll supply this workbook to you all in some way, like make this available to.
Yeah, we'll distribute it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I covered these kind of tips in my Tableau conference, but I'm going to go over them kind of briefly, but then really just go into Tableau and kind of tweak and work with maps. Okay. So first and foremost, tip number 1 is I think a simple map is the best map, right? Maps can be very powerful tools, but if they become too cluttered with stuff, then it becomes very difficult for the reader to figure out what's going on. Okay, and my rule of thumb is 1 map equals 1 message. And if you're trying to convey too many messages in a single map, maybe you need multiple maps, right? And so kind of the 3 steps to kind of think about is focus on your phenomenon. So what is it that you really want to showcase or highlight? Okay, and I'll show you an example in a minute where I really wanted to just highlight all the attractions in Balboa Park. Okay, and then you need something to kind of provide some context, right? You can't just have a bunch of points, but you don't need everything, right? And so oftentimes in Tableau, you bring something into the view, and then Mapbox has this base map, right, with a bunch of layers. But oftentimes you don't need all that stuff, and I'll show you kind of an example in a minute. And then you leave everything else out, right? Provide kind of the minimal context, and then leave everything else out. So, for example, this is a kind of a close-up. I don't know if you can see it kind of back where you are, but this is a close-up of the map that I just showed of Balboa Park. I was super excited to come back to San Diego. I used to come when I lived in LA area. I used to come to San Diego quite a bit because it's 2 hours away. It's beautiful, nice beaches, things like that. And Balboa Park was one of my favorite places to go. I didn't realize there were so many things there. I don't know. This is different from I don't think I've been there for at least 10 years, but I was just amazed at everything that was there, right? I didn't realize that there was so much stuff, and maybe that's something that's kind of changed over the course of the last decade or so. So basically, the purpose of this was really I wanted to showcase everything that Balboa Park had to offer. That was kind of the main purpose, and so I got data on all the different attractions, museums, gardens, things like that, and started plotting them, right? And so in trying to keep this simple, and maybe this might be a little busy now that I'm looking at it, right? I wanted to really highlight the attractions. So those are kind of big points with really bright colors. I numbered them so then so people can kind of decipher which ones are which. But everything else I tried to kind of put in the background. Okay, so one thing that I usually use as context are roads, because especially major highways, freeways, major streets, those often provide enough context to allow the reader to know kind of generally where that is, right? We're never going to use Tableau to say, oh, here reader, here is the directions to so-and-so, or such and such a place, right? We have Google Maps. We have things like that, right? So we're never gonna, I don't think Tableau's ever gonna get to a point where we, never get to the point where we're actually asking users to navigate from one place to the other, right? But I wanted to provide, and so these are the roads, right? So I wanted to provide enough context to allow the reader to do that. I also wanted to distinguish the San Diego Zoo, and this is in gray. Underneath the points, I have all the buildings, and for some reason, maybe I would lighten those a little bit, but I wanted to highlight the buildings in Balboa Park in some way, but somewhat kind of lesser in the hierarchy compared to the attractions. These are the buildings for the Naval Medical Center, and because that's not in Balboa Park, I decided to make them gray, right? And then eventually I included a separate line boundary for the entire park. Okay. Things that I left out, everything outside of the park, right? So if I plotted this and had a map box background, it would have everything around Balboa Park. For this particular map, I didn't feel that was necessary, right? And so I left everything out here, okay? And how did I do that? These are all separate shape files that I brought into Tableau. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And some of you might not be in the space where you're bringing in spatial files, but I would encourage you to kind of think about it because it really gives you a lot more control over what your map looks like. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit in a minute as well. Okay. One thing you'll also notice is the way Balboa Park is situated. I made it positioned it as the central thing, but you'll notice that there's some white space. Now in data visualization, we talk about white space as we want to maximize or take advantage of white space because it makes our visualizations clearer, right? Our dashboards clearer. In this case, because geography has inherent white space, sometimes we have to take advantage and maximize the white space here. So this part right here was empty, so I put some text here. This spot right here, this white space, I put the title. And then this entire right part of the Balboa Park, right, where there were no attractions, and I think it's just trails and things, right, out there. I decided to include the list of attractions here because I felt that this was kind of inherent white space that I can utilize otherwise. Does that make sense? And so try to maximize those things. And of course, this gets into the floating versus tile kind of debate. This is all floating, right? Which is, again, maybe you're not in the space to be doing floating things, but something to think about. Like, let's say you tiled this, all the attractions are here. I mean, you have some open space here or white space that makes it, the map, in my mind, just empty in some ways, right? That you can maximize. And it's also space, real estate on the dashboard to kind of think about as well. Does that make sense? Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about, all these little elements in a minute. Okay. Second tip is don't use defaults, right? Or don't accept them automatically, right? So let me give you an example. This is a quote by Jeff Aiken, who's a cartographer from New Zealand. We want to make deliberate choices, right? So when we think about defaults, right, some of them are good, some of them are bad. Sometimes there's too much, but we want to think intentionally about the defaults, right? So just like when we create a bar chart, Tableau automatically has grid lines and things like that, right? Those are the defaults, but we actively take them out because we intentionally think we don't need them, right? Same when you create a map. The map box layer comes in. Do we need all that stuff? Okay, so here, so I have a blank worksheet here, but I'm just going to bring in the places in Balboa Park here, So automatically, so these are all the places that I mapped out in the other map. And you'll notice, Mapbox, of course, has this layer, okay? Now, one thing I don't want, one of the main reasons I don't like Mapbox is once this happens, this layer essentially becomes an image. We can't do anything to this. What in the Tableau, right? Once we bring it into Tableau. Of course, we can create a custom Mapbox, right? And do that. But once it comes in here, there's no way for me to kind of play with what this looks like. I can get rid of some of this stuff, right? Like I don't need all these street names, right? Because for me, at least in terms of my map, it wasn't important, right? So let me kind of center this a little bit. Okay. I can, so some of this default. So I felt like I didn't need anything outside of the park boundaries, right? But with Mapbox, it provides all of that. And let me take it out then. The problem with that is there's only so much you can do, right? So if I take out the streets, it takes out the streets for everything. But I wanted to have the streets in Balboa Park. Like we can take out certain things, right? We can add certain things, right? But you're kind of limited in what you can do, right? Of course, we can go into Mapbox, customize it, and then bring it and use that custom base layer there. But again, it's essentially an image, and you can't play with it at that point. Like, what if I wanted to change the color of these points? Then I have to go to Mapbox and then re-customize it and then bring it back in, right? And so one reason, I think a big reason for using your own spatial files is once you bring those in, now they become data that you can format, right? They become features that you can format. So once you bring in the streets, so let me bring in the streets really quick. I'm gonna turn this all off. And once I bring in the streets for Balboa Park, I can start playing with them. Oops. I'm bringing the streets below. So now I can adjust the size. I can turn them kind of grayish, like so. And already you can see now I can start playing with the base map, quote unquote, right? It's not really base map, it's actual data that I'm bringing in, right? But now the base map, I can adjust it depending on what I want to do with the main data that I want to highlight, which are the points or the attractions of Balboa Park. Does that make sense? Okay. All right.
Dennis, Ojo here. Sorry, I have a question.
Oh, sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt the flow of your.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay, good to see you.
Ojo from Toronto.
Hi. So my question is, you brought in the shape files, and that's fantastic. Would you mind sharing how I can source these shape files? Where can I find a repository of them?
Yes, I will go through some of that a little bit later on.
All right. Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I will talk to it. I'll speak to it a little bit. I am a social work professor. I don't have a lot of funding. So almost everything that I use is public data. So these roads I access from OpenStreetMap. These points for attractions, I manually put them into an Excel file. Some of the other things, like if you're going into kind of demographics and things like that, I rely on census data. And census provides a lot of shape files also for some of the designations. So like if you're interested in postal codes or zip codes, if you're interested in school districts, if you're interested in census tracts, or city boundaries, coastlines, things like that. The Census Bureau, the U.S. Census Bureau provides a lot of that. Okay, so I map on the cheap, right? Like I don't have any funding for a lot of this data. Obviously, there's big companies that provide this data, maybe cleaner, maybe easier to use in some ways, but I access a lot of this from just public places and I'll try to share some links to the co-leaders that they can provide. So I'll include them maybe in the workbook as well. Does that help, Joe?
Awesome, thank you.
Excel file, you did you just put the coordinates essentially?
So let's see how I did this one. So I found the places from the Balboa Park website. Okay. In some cases they had the address, but they also had a map, right, that I can use. And so I ended up going to Google Maps, and you can click on a point, right click, and then you can get the latitude and longitude coordinates pretty easily. Right. And I could show you that really quick.
So you did use the coordinates?
Yes. In this case, I used the coordinates.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know if people have used Google Maps in this way. So, for example, if I wanted to get the Museum of Art, if I wanted to get those coordinates, I right click, and then you have the coordinates right there. Okay. You select it, and then you can plop it directly into your spreadsheet, into your data. Sorry, it's taking a while for Google. Excel. You might have to it's in one cell right now, so you might have to change it from text to columns, like so. But now you get the latitude and longitude. And the cool thing is, at the local level, you really need a lot more specificity, right? You can't get away with 32.73. You really need 6 to 10 digits after the decimal point to really get the pin, like a little more accuracy in terms of where that point should be. Right? Good questions. Keep them coming. So I'm going to walk through this a little bit. I think one thing I've learned over the course of the last 15 years creating maps is I focus a lot on the tiniest details. The position of this label, the colors of these points, things like that. And so, but all of that, just like you might do with a bar chart, and just getting it just right. And maybe you just need to quickly make a bar chart, but sometimes we want to make it an effective bar chart. In the same way, creating an effective map, you kind of focus on, I tend to focus a lot on just these tiny details. And in my mind, I think it makes a difference, right? And I'll go through a few of these examples. Are the online folks okay? Like, I assume they're listening and things like that. Okay. I just thought. Okay. So these are the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to walk through some of these principles that we often think about as when we're creating maps. They're very similar, I think, in how we think about data visualizations. So visual contrast is how kind of the different elements in the map contrast with each other, right? So, the things that you want to highlight, are they visually contrasted with everything else in the map, right? Legibility obviously is, can you read things? Is it clear? Figure ground is you have a background or a base layer, do the things that you really want to highlight. Does your map kind of pop from the background? Okay, it's very similar to visual contrast. These are obviously aren't mutually exclusive. Visual hierarchy, are there the things that you want to highlight, are they kind of brighter? Do they pop out more compared to things that you don't want to highlight as much, right? Is there kind of some hierarchy in the way you visualized your map, right? From important to less important, for example. And how do you do that? Okay, and then balance is everything, like I talked about white space, like does everything seem balanced in your map or your visualization? And so I'll go through a couple kind of techniques, how I'm kind of to try to address each of these. Okay. All right, so this is the map as a worksheet. And this is kind of what I plopped into the dashboard, essentially, right? And there's a couple things I kind of want to kind of talk a little bit about, okay? So you'll notice that there's a bunch of layers. One layer in particular is this border. And I'll change the color of it just so you can see. Right? So this is border. I really wanted the border to be a little thicker than than all the other lines. And why is that? So I can create that visual contrast, right? So this is the border. So if I had everything kind of, everything else that was around Balboa Park, that could be one way to contrast things, right? In this case, I made it dark. And, obviously I can make it a little thicker, right? Like so, right? To really hone in on, okay, boom, this is Balboa Park, right? And to kind of distinguish, and especially I wanted to distinguish this border, which surrounds the Naval Medical Center, which is, I guess, technically not part of Balboa Park, right? So I wanted to highlight that and kind of distinguish those lines, right? And so one way to kind of visually contrast things is the size, obviously, right? I'm talking to, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? In terms of these are kind of the same things we think about in creating other data visualizations. I want to hone in on a couple things also. So here, let me see if I can kind of get in there. Okay. So right here, so the History Center, the Railroad Museum, the Model Railroad Museum, and the Photography Museum, right? Those are all housed in the same place, right? You notice when I zoom in, obviously these circles are distinguishable, right? But if I zoom out, initially when I had them, they were overlapping on top of each other. And so I had to, in this case, what I did was I went, and you can adjust the latitude and longitude, using Google, and you can kind of pick different places and things like that. What I ended up doing is using QGIS to manually move the dots, the points, to where I wanted them to be placed. So that when I zoom to the entire view, these 3 points don't overlap, don't cover each other, and are distinguishable, even though they're in the same place. Does that make sense? Right. Another place I did that was these two, which I don't know what they are. Contemporary art and the International Museum. Is that where the reception was?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was another example of where there were 2 points that coincided in the same location. And so I had to kind of manually move these. And so that's an example of a small detail. But I think it makes, once we zoom out, I think it makes a big difference, right? So that the points aren't overlapping on top of each other. Does that make sense? Okay. So I wanted to make sure that these 2 points didn't overlap each other, and you can still see the numbers that they represented, right? And so kind of speaking to legibility now. Okay. In terms of hierarchy, let's go back. You'll notice one thing I did for the roads here one thing you'll notice for the roads, so this is the legend. Now, the roads, when you get the roads shapefile from OpenStreetMap, I've learned over time there's a bunch of fields, but one particular field are the codes. Okay, and I use these often to distinguish different types of roads. So these are major highways. These tend to be kind of streets, like major streets, and so forth. And the higher the number is, the smaller in terms of the road, and eventually we get into pedestrian and trails and things like that. And so one way to create that visual hierarchy, right, is making the major roads darker, and then the smaller roads lighter, right? But you'll notice I also ended up filtering some of this, right? Because if I included all these roads, I think it would be a lot busier than I would want it, right? Because it includes everything: walkways, bicycle lanes, things like that. And I didn't want all that because it would have looked too cluttered, but I included enough, but I created the visual art hierarchy by varying the shading. They're all kind of black to gray, but kind of varying kind of the darkness of them. I also made, let's see, what else? Okay. Does this kind of make sense? I'm hoping I'm speaking to these. So I kind of spoke to visual contrast, trying to ensure that all the points were legible. I'll go into figure ground in a minute, and then visual hierarchy, and I'll go into balance in a minute as well. Does that make sense? Okay. So the little details, right? Like you might not think, oh, making a border thicker, right? But I think in my mind, it makes a big difference, right? And I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I probably spend a lot more time than the average Tableau user thinking about maps. And so hopefully these lessons learned are helpful. Okay. Next, I want to put this on a dashboard, okay? So one thing I noticed originally is the shape of Balboa Park is more kind of vertical versus horizontal, right? And so I thought, okay, maybe I'll create a dashboard where it's a little more vertical than horizontal. And so that's something to think about, right? Like if you're mapping something and if it looks more vertical than or horizontal, maybe in your dashboard, kind of creating the container in a way that really maximizes the shape and adjusts for the shape of whatever geographic kind of unit that you're focused on. So in the dashboard here, so I'm going to make this, actually, I'm going to reverse these. I don't know if you can see those numbers. So instead of 1,000 pixels width, I'm going to make it 800 and then 1,000 pixels height, right? Just to kind of create a dashboard that's taller versus wider. Okay. And then I'm just going to plop this in. Oops, that's not it. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Let me get rid of the title and then the legends. Okay. And one of the things I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to adjust the layout so it fills the entire space. So starting at 0, 0, and then it's 800 width, 1,000 height. Okay, so it kind of looks like that. Okay, now it's already because I created this, it's already the kind of the scale that it's zoomed at. It's already kind of fills the entire space. But sometimes you have to kind of play with it, right? And so one thing that I do is I'll just decrease the size, and then use the select option to kind of try to get as close to the dimensions as possible, like so. Okay. And maybe shorten it a little bit or things like that, right? Okay. So that's one thing. One thing that's kind of lacking in Tableau is a way to kind of zoom in or zoom out on a map at a very specific scale. you can't do that in Tableau. You just have to kind of guesstimate, right? Like the zoom, the scale that you're at. But but generally, you kind of want to kind of do whatever looks good, right? Okay. And so in terms of balance, one thing to think about is you have a container that has a map in your dashboard, right? You want it, you don't want too much open space, right? And so one reason to kind of look at kind of the alignment of the geographic kind of layout. So if it's the state of California, you want it a little more vertical. If it's the state of Texas, you want it a little more square. If it's Tennessee or Virginia, maybe a little more horizontal, right? So something to kind of think about, because then you kind of minimize the amount of geographic or inherent open space there is, right? And then you kind of hopefully kind of maximize the space in your dashboard as well. Does that make sense? Okay. And then again, talking about kind of balance, there's this open space here. I talked a little about that I really wanted to fill. Like it just looks kind of empty to me, right? This part right here just looks blank to me because there's nothing here as far as all of these points. There's just nothing here. So in my mind, this was wasted space. And so I wanted to kind of fill it in with something. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is where I put the title. This is where I put the kind of the brief description. And again, this is where I put the list, right? Questions? Is this helpful? I don't know.
No, this is fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully these, and you can take some of these as like, these little tips, hopefully to kind of bring into your workspace as well. One cool thing that happened, and this was kind of this happened kind of before I really discovered Tableau, is the introduction of map layers. So I heard that how people used to create maps was through dual layers or dual axis. So then you can only have kind of 2 layers on a map, right? Now you can have multiple layers, and and I've shown you some examples, right? So here in this main one, right, I have multiple layers that I've just piled into this map. Okay, but even the cooler thing about it is now you don't have to worry about the data model, right? You can just literally bring in kind of data, and as long as they're geographically aligned, they'll map onto each other as you're bringing them into the view. Okay. So let me give you kind of some examples, right? So you notice I just have a bunch of data here that I brought in as separate data sources. Okay, so Balboa Park border, the places, the buildings, and so forth. Okay, roads, the San Diego Zoo specifically, water, etc. Okay, I brought these in as separate data sources. These are all shapefiles that are in the folder that I provided. And all I need to do is select one of these and just bring them into the view. And I don't have to worry about the data model. They're all treated as distinct data sources, but because they're geographically aligned, because they're spatially, they have some spatial location to them. When I bring them in, Tableau is going to be able to just layer them on top of each other. You don't have to worry about the data model. Whereas I think in the past you had to worry about the data model. Okay. So for example, I'm just going to start bringing in kind of data. So there's the borders.
For the border, how did you define that line? Did you manually trace it?
No, there is probably a shapefile, either from Census Bureau, which probably provides it, but also OpenStreetMap that designates places. So in this case, I think, parks, for example. And so I got the border for Balboa Park by just saying, oh, I just want this, create a separate shapefile just of Balboa Park boundaries, and then brought it in. But the interesting thing, just the other note is, this is not a polygon, right? This is a line. So for that reason, then I'm able to adjust the thickness of the line because it's a line, not a polygon. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? Whereas a polygon, you can put a border, but then you can't adjust the thickness of that line, that border. Right. Whereas this is a line, so I'm able to adjust the thickness.
That was OpenStreetMap.
Yeah, OpenStreetMap. Yeah. I'll show you a couple places like toward the end because I think that seems to be what folks are interested in.
Yeah, that was my question. Like, is it just a website, OpenStreetMap.com?
No, if it was that easy, it would be awesome, right? The one that I go to regularly is,
you mentioned QGIS
as
well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like the workflow of OpenStreetMap into QGIS type of thing?
No, the QGIS is a separate software.
Okay.
So this is QGIS, and I'll show you this in a minute. Sure. Yeah, but in terms of data for OpenStreetMap, specifically, I go to, I think there's this guy who does this, but he creates extracts of OpenStreetMap. And I'll copy this over so it's bigger. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. Oh, that didn't work. No, that's not going to work. Sorry.
Copy and drop it in there.
Yeah, I'll drop it into. Okay, where should I drop this? Let me see. Tableau.
Back in Tableau.
Back in Tableau. Let's see. Captions, maybe, right? Maybe. There. Okay. So this place, and what it allows you to do is select. You can kind of go in to smaller geographic. Like, obviously, if you wanted a road data, for the entire world, that would be way too much data, right, for anybody to handle. And so you can go drill down. So in this case, I went to North America, United States, and then, of course, California. And then California, because California is so big, it designates Northern California and Southern California. And then there's a place here where you can download all the shapefiles, and I think it gets updated, every so often. And but all the related OpenStreetMap data for that region. And I'll show you once it downloads the various types of data, and that's kind of where I extract a lot of this. The kind of for the base map, the roads, the buildings, and things like that. Okay. How are we doing with time?
Got 20 minutes.
20 minutes. They said I can go on, as long as I wanted. So I still got about like an hour's worth of.
Hey, this is fantastic. Keep it up. The doors are locked, so you better enjoy it.
No. Okay. And then one kind of cool tip that maybe you don't know is, so these are shapefiles. I did something on the 500 bars that are in the downtown area. Did another map of that. So this is what a shapefile looks like. I don't know if you can see that. A shapefile is made up of, it's kind of an antiquated kind of form of data filing, because it's kind of like bulky and clunky. And so but this is how I learned it. So a shapefile is basically made up kind of about 5 or 7 different files. You have to kind of keep them all together in the same folder. Plus they have to have the same name. And so you'll notice they have different extensions here. the one you kind of need to worry about most is this one, right? As long as you keep all the files together. And one thing you may not know, like you can just drag data into the worksheet. Did that work? And then it connects to the data. And then when I go back to the data here, so now that's a new data source right there. Now I can kind of plop it into the map and things like that. So how I usually add data is I simply just drag them, continue to drag them into the worksheet. Like it'll send you to the data pane, the data source pane, but then you go to the worksheet again, drag another one in. And then it'll take you to the data source, go back to the worksheet, drag another one in. And then you can add all of these all at once and then start making your map. Okay. But it does this weird thing with this gray square, which I don't like, which I don't know how to get rid of. Okay. Did it finish? Let's see. Yeah. So you have the zip file here. And when you open it up, so this is the zip file that I just downloaded from that website. Now it might take a little while. It's taken me a while to kind of get comfortable with, I don't use all this data, right? This is just too much. So this is the shapefile for buildings, land use, natural. So you have to kind of figure out what all of these are. I use roads quite a bit. So here are the road files here. And I'll show you what they look like in QGIS really quickly, so you know. So I'm going to drag the road shapefile in, and these are the roads for California. And then obviously I don't need all of this when I was doing the San Diego maps. So I would drill down and then clip, and then I would cut and clip just the roads that I need and then bring that into Tableau. Okay, and I'll show you an example of this, hopefully if we have time. So you know this is QGIS. So GIS is a software. Generally, so there's different companies, but QGIS is a free GIS software that's specialized software dealing with spatial files. So you notice when I plopped in the shapefile, it just mapped it out right away, right? And I can do that with all the files, right? And one reason I advocate and encourage people to, maybe add a GIS tool to your belt, especially if you're interested in map making or making maps and dealing with spatial files, it's just easier for me at least to edit, to manipulate, to prep the data. And then once I prep all the data, bring it into Tableau to visualize. Right. And one of the reasons why I like visualizing maps in Tableau is because you can add all the data visualizations. You can design it. It gives you a lot of it gives you a blank slate to kind of design a visualization or a dashboard. You can add the interactivity, things like that are not available in a software like QGIS. But it's so the same way that I think people use Alteryx or Tableau Prep or even Excel, right, to prep the data. I use QGIS to manipulate and prep spatial data before I bring it into Tableau. And I'll give you a quick example of what I've done in the past, and hopefully it'll give you a flavor of that and maybe encourage you to kind of think about it. Okay. This was another example where I kind of played with some layers to kind of create a neon effect. One thing that you can do, let's see, where's the map? So one thing I did was, these are 4 layers, right? You can see that, right? Roads, glow 1, glow 2, glow 3. But these are all the same data. These are all road data, okay? So basically I overlaid 4 layers of roads and then varied the thickness, the color, the opacity, in order to get kind of this neon effect that kind of looks like that. Does that make sense? And so one thing about when I say take advantage of map layers, obviously you can layer, you know, I heard somebody had like 40 layers, right? So, but in this case, I have 4 layers of roads. It's all the same data, right? It's not like you're not recreating data. You're connected to the same data set, right? The same road data. But I applied it 4 times to the view and then overlaid that and then adjusted the color, the opacity a little bit, some thicker than others, some white versus kind of this neon pink color, in order to kind of get this, what I think kind of looks like a neon kind of fluorescent effect, right? And then, you know, I created this parameter kind of to change the color and things like that, right? So again, it's just 4 layers, duplicate layers on top of each other, but varying the color and the opacity and the thickness in order to get kind of different effects. So you can think about this. I think this could be applicable in a number of different ways. So for example, one way that I've used it is sometimes you want labels to be positioned in different ways, but Tableau only allows you to kind of format it in a single way, right? If it's one layer. You could manually move them, but let's say you had 100 labels, and it would be quite a chore to kind of manually reposition all those. And then when you create, actions and things like that, those labels automatically get reset sometimes, right? And so one way to do that is to create different layers of different points. And then by doing so, then you can position labels like for one layer to the right, for another layer to the left, and things like that. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. All right. So tip 5 is like what I've been doing all along is using my own spatial files. And hopefully I've adequately advocated and stated some of the justifications, right? I think it just gives you a lot more control in Tableau, right? Versus the map box background layers, which essentially, to me, are images, right? And as you play and kind of fit around with the maps, bringing in kind of these spatial files allow you to kind of do that. And if you're thinking about doing that, I would strongly encourage you to bring in a GIS tool and add it to your tool bed, and kind of learn it, right? I think there's enough resources out there to kind of learn. So I use QGIS, which is free, open source software, and it's available on the Mac, whereas ArcGIS is not available on the Mac. So if you use a Mac, that's another reason. Things like that. But I would strongly encourage you to kind of think about it, because what I'll show you in a minute is it's just easier to manipulate data, especially spatial data, in a GIS tool. Okay, so I'll show you one example really quick. Okay. So I brought in the maps. And so one thing I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to zoom into the San Diego area, like so. And let's say I wanted to, I don't know, like for this purposes, let's say I want to create a circular map, okay? Like a map, like a circular map, a circle, and then the map of San Diego in the middle, right? Okay. You can do that pretty easily you can create the data pretty easily in a GIS tool, and then plop that data into Tableau. So let me give you a quick example. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new shapefile and call this circle. And then this will be a polygon, and then push OK. Now, I haven't created the circle. I haven't drawn the circle, but this is the new layer here called circle. These are the roads And on top of that will be the circle. And so I'm going to just draw a circle. That's not a circle. First, I need to select circle. Okay. So I'm going to draw a circle, and let's center it over here. Okay. And I know San Diego's a lot bigger than this, but I'm just going to do this for the sake. Okay. Now it draws a circle. Okay. Now this is a circle. Once I save it, it's basically a shapefile. I can bring this into Tableau, and it will map this circle. And so you can imagine, and it's located here. It's not, when you bring it into Tableau, it's not going to go over to Europe or Australia. This circle is mapped right on top of San Diego. Right? And so you can imagine kind of the utilities. So one thing that I've done is I wanted the exact positioning on a map. So I've drawn a rectangle. And then I can create a locator map, kind of a small indicator map on the side, and using the same rectangle, show where on the United States, for example, where the bigger map is shown. You've seen that, right? Like kind of the extent, right, map, right? But Tableau really doesn't allow you to do that, right? You just kind of have to guesstimate. But by drawing a rectangle or circle, you know that this circle is going to look exactly the same regardless when you bring it into Tableau, right? So I'm going to save this circle as a shapefile, and let's just call this circle San Diego. And once I bring it in, hopefully this will make sense. The other thing I'm going to do is, so the road data is huge, but I just want to make a circular map of the roads in San Diego. So I'm going to clip the road data based on this circle. So only the road data that's within this circle is going to show up, create another layer, and I'm going to save that as a shapefile. Does that make sense? So really quickly, clip. I'm going to clip the roads. That's the input layer and then using this circle, okay? And so once I do that, I'm going to run it. And of course, something's not going to work. Let's see. Okay. So now I can turn off the main layer, and now I have just, oops, go back. Now I just have the roads in that circle, okay? And then I'm going to save that as a roads, and I'm going to call this clipped.
And is that how you kind of did the Tableau Park outline?
A little bit, yeah. You can also select different features. Like in that case, I just selected Balboa Park and then created a separate shapefile just for Balboa Park. Yeah. But in terms of the roads, I used the Balboa Park boundary and clipped the roads that just were in Balboa Park. Exactly. Okay. Now I can bring these shapefiles into Tableau. So I'm going to bring the roads in. And I'm not going to do anything yet because I just want to add the roads. It takes me to the data pane. I'm going to go back to the worksheet and then add the circle. Like so. Okay. Now, once I've connected to these, so here's the data source for the circle, and here's the road, clipped road data source. So I'm just going to add this to and of course it's going to look like an A because one thing you have to worry about now is projection, which is without going into like a big description, the world is a globe, not a perfect globe, but as you peel the surface and try to make a flat surface, there's different ways to do that. Those are called different projections. Tableau only uses Mercator projection. And I think I created the circle based on another projection. That's why it looks like an oval, but that's okay, right? So the purpose of this is to make an oval map of San Diego. Okay. Let me make this thinner a little bit now. And then I'm going to add the circle as well. Should have changed the projection, but anyways. Okay. And so now I have the circle. Right, so this is the same circle I drew in QGIS, but it basically now is spatial data, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can plot this on the back. I can make this, let's make this kind of black, and then I can make this kind of white a little bit. Let me, and then the roads, I don't need all the roads, so I'm just gonna filter. And again, these are these codes, right? So I'm just gonna filter to the main ones. And I've done this so many times, so I'm just quickly doing this now. Let me add a couple more. And then once we do that, you have a oval map of San Diego. Right? Using data that I prepared and prepped and manipulated and created. I created the circle, right? I created that circle as data in a GIS tool and then brought it in Tableau to visualize it. To visualize in Tableau. Okay.
And Dennis?
Yeah.
So when you brought in like let's say for the Tableau, you brought in like the specific like points of interest, is that in Excel or are you manipulating that in
Let me think of what I did. It probably started with an Excel file, but I brought that into QGIS because I needed to manipulate some of the points a little bit. Like remember I said I had to move them a little bit manually. So you can do that in GIS, in a GIS tool, and manually move things.
But could you like if they were right in Excel, that could be layered in Excel?
Yeah. You would you would have latitude and longitude just like anything. Then you use make point to kind of create the points, the location, the geographic kind of field, and then you can bring that in. Yes. Okay, and I think that's it. This is my, please connect. This is my Twitter. This is my LinkedIn. This is QR code is to my Linktree. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Linktree, which has my Tableau public profile and other information. But hopefully you found this helpful. I'm open to any questions that you might have. I'm bumping against 8 or 7, right?
Yep.
But thank you for hanging in there. Hopefully this was helpful. It's great, meeting all of you.
Any questions? I know we all absorbed it, but reach out. He's open to reach out. You can come to us. Oh, yes.
Question. When we're playing the Balboa Park one, did you have in mind whether or not that was going to be like interactive or just...
For the Balboa Park one, I don't think I made it interactive. So the purpose of that was to create a static map. Yeah, but obviously, I could have done different things with the map too. But the purpose of that was, the idea behind that was to create a static map. And so obviously a static map needs to, you kind of need to think about different issues versus an interactive map where the user can kind of zoom in or things like that, right? With a static map, things I think have to be even clearer, right, in some way. So that was what I was trying to do. I don't know if I accomplished that, but that was the purpose, the main purpose.
When you're using kind of to that point, like when you're using is it GIS to like break like you said you use it for the point of interest. Were you still able to like hover over them? I can't remember.
Not in the yeah. So in the I do have tooltips though. Let me see, where is it? No, let me look at this one. Yeah, I mean there are tooltips, so there is some interaction. Yeah, a little bit of interaction.
Are you still able to hover over the roads?
I turned that off because I did. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
So under any of these, so I added these layers. It doesn't allow you to do that if there's a single layer, but if there's another layer, so like for example, if there's multiple layers or at least 2 layers, there's an option here to disable selection. So if you click on that, so if I unclick it, then I can hover over and it'll highlight. But there's no purpose for the reader to hover over the boundaries and have a tooltip, right? And actually that I think that distracts the reader as well if we're able to hover over all these rows. So for any layers that I are just kind of base background, or I don't have any intention for the user to select or hover over, I just disable selection for that, and now when they hover, it's no longer hoverable. Is that?
Yeah, I know that was an option.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, cool.
You learned one new thing.
Does anyone know if like for like bar graphs and stuff, is that an option for that too?
I think you could just turn off the tooltip, right?
Yeah, you can turn off the tooltip.
There's
But
still like a hover though, like it still outlines the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
I'm
good
just wondering if there's like an
question.
option like that.
I don't even know about maps. I don't know. No, I think there's probably a way. One thing that I've done here, like in case you're interested, right, is I learned this tip some time ago, but
Yeah.
you'll notice that this no highlight kind of field is in here, and I have them across all of them. And I think the reason for that is, like, if I selected this, for example, or things like that, like some of these other things would be highlighted because everything's on top of each other. So this no highlight is basically a calculated field with nothing. I just put quotes there, right? And then in the dashboard, let's see, where's the dashboard here? This is the dashboard. So I put the no highlight field in all of the layers. And then in the action, I included an action here, no highlight, which is basically all of the layers, all of the containers, and then under selected field, I clicked on the no highlight. And for some reason, this, I think, somehow cancels out the highlight for the layer. I'm not sure how it works, but I learned this tip a while ago. And so somehow it cancels out the highlight. So then when you're kind of pressing on things, it doesn't highlight everything else. Yeah.
Can you turn it off so I can see what it looks like?
Yeah, let me see. I think the only way,
Yeah,
let me just remove it and see. Let's see what happens here. Of course, nothing happens. I found this problem in other maps. It might not be a problem in this particular map, but it didn't do anything, right? There's no difference, but I'm not sure. Let me see. Let me turn it back on. Let's see what's the difference. Is there any difference? Yeah. Okay. So turn back on. So there is a difference, right? It doesn't go in and out, right? Yeah. So there is a difference there.
Everything else.
There's a blog. I think we send it in the like on the link.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's something I read. I have no idea why it works, but I've been using it, and boom,
yeah,
I didn't want to say how it works, but it does work.
it somehow cancels out the highlighting for some
It's
reason.
basically projecting a selection of everything when you select one thing. So you select.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I just know it works. That's all.
So in the chat, no questions, just everyone praising you and how
thank you.
wonderful everything is and all your work. And
Thank you, everybody.
I will make sure to send all the positive comments over, but they're flowing there.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm happy to entertain questions if anybody has any specific questions. But thank you so much for your time.
All right. Well, thank you. And to everyone virtual, we're going to wrap it up here. So I'm going to end this. Thank you so much for everyone for logging in. It was nice seeing everyone. We'll post a video either later this week or beginning of this week. And thank you so much. You have a wonderful night. Thanks again.
So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, making maps in Tableau. You gotta know it's a road full of charts. From the data to the dashboard, let's start. Big dreams, big scenes, every point counts. Data streams, making scenes, building up amounts. From the raw to refined, we're breaking new grounds. Visualize the story, let the insights surround. Heat maps, flow maps, any kind of plot. Layering the data, giving it all we've got. Geocoding secrets, we're hitting the spot. Every map a masterpiece, never forgot. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, you gotta push it far. Big data dreams, traveling in fast cars. But the map game, it's a whole new art. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, making maps that spark. Big data dreams shining like a star. But remember, it's a journey, it's hard. From the cityscapes to the mountain highs, we chart the course, see through data's eyes. Interactive elements, no surprise. Engaging stories that'll mesmerize. Drill down, zoom out, navigate the space. Filtering the insights, setting the pace. Custom color palettes in your face. Map layers aligned, never out of place. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, you gotta push it far. Big data dreams, traveling in fast cars. But the map game, it's a whole new art. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, making maps that spark. Big data dreams shining like a star. But remember, it's a journey, it's hard. Point every line, every single stat. Mapping out the world, no turning back. From the simplest graph to the complex stack. Map superstar, we're on the right track. Heat maps, flow maps, every single style. In Tableau, making maps worthwhile. Every new project, another mile. Map superstar, making data smile. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, you gotta push it far. Big data dreams, traveling in fast cars. But the map game, it's a whole new art. So you wanna be a map superstar and live large, making maps that spark. Big data dreams shining like a star. But remember, it's a journey, it's hard. You wanna be a map superstar. Tableau's the stage, data is the guitar. Visualizing dreams, raising the bar. Map superstar, that's who we are. 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 Map superstar, shining like a star.